So Matt, you just had a live show.
Yep.
And you had some observations around the misalignment of kind
Yeah.
of folks' roles in the event world,
Yeah.
and you have an update for us, right? You
Yeah.
had some insights from the audience, from the community.
Yes. So we had a really good live show. And one of the things we talked about was misalignment in organizations and then how that affects the events program, right? And the long story short on it was essentially that CEOs, CMOs, the executives, they do want sales and marketing channel style results from events, right? I think they may not do a great job of expressing that, putting the pressure downward on that, or setting up the infrastructure in the organization to accomplish that. So moving down from there, most companies really do have, especially ones that are deploying 20% of their marketing capital and they're doing trade shows and host events and, partner conferences, is they have an event manager, an event marketer. Some, I would even say, level up from that, obviously, like a director of events. Problem there is many of those individuals thrown in the fire, under-resourced, learning as they go. They build themselves into director of events over a long period. They're very busy. They're busy executing. So what ends up getting lost is strategy, right? And then the next place I went to was like this idea of like VPs and all the stakeholders above, sales, marketing, go-to-market, right? And sometimes strategy is just getting lost with events. It becomes this thing that's just executed. So strategy is getting lost. Now, the thought that I kind of had, because we talked about it on the show, I broke it down for everybody, all much more in depth than that. And I was getting a lot of agreements. I was also getting a lot of people saying, yeah, but, and asking these things. And what it made me think afterwards was, look, you have some very large organizations. What I'm asking the question is, who is owning strategy of events? It's a sales and marketing channel. It is a piece of pipeline building, customer relationship building, company initiative driving. There's a lot. So who owns it? Who's responsible? Because the person that is responsible and owns something is the person that crafts the strategy, not exactly the person that executes the strategy. Mm-hmm. And that gets lost. That person is getting lost in my eyes. 12 years of doing this, selling, building my company into these companies, as well as now running this podcast and talking to people. Mm-hmm. And what I realized was some really big companies have this. They have what you call a head of global events, but majority of the companies do not. They don't have a head of global events and they are still deploying capital. And what ends up happening is they sometimes have a very talented person in the seat of director of events or event manager, mm-hmm. but they don't give that person a seat at the table. They don't give them the opportunity, the time, and the infrastructure to be the strategist, to own it. And then a lot of times, even more scary, they don't even have that talented of a person. They have a person they threw into the fire that's doing it. And oftentimes, those people are just scrambling up to stakeholders, and those stakeholders aren't crafting that strategy.
Yeah. If I'm hearing you correctly, your first take on it for the show was this idea that the event marketer needs to have a seat at the table in order to be able to have this strategic conversation. If you have it, you're kind of always protecting it.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it, you need to go fight for it every single day. And what I'm hearing from you is that the aha was that there is multiple levels to this thing, right? There's the global event director that generally has that seat.
They own it.
They own it. They own the strategy.
Yeah.
Whereas the other titles seem to own the execution of it.
Yeah.
But strategy is owned by no one. Or they they believe that they own the strategy, but when they go try to like implement on strategy, they're getting railroaded or whatever. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
And my thought too is we used to discuss a lot, and I do firmly believe in this. As the event marketer, as the event manager, if you're in that position, go up, ask the questions, get yourself involved. The problem is that only does so much. They're not going to change the infrastructure of the company. A lot of those people, they don't have the seat at the table. They don't have the juice to get some of this stuff done. Yep. So I think what it comes down to is I would probably be urging CEOs, CMOs, VPs, people in position to move and adjust infrastructure to say, who owns the strategic approach of our events as a sales and marketing channel? Who owns it? And if you're looking and saying, well, it's this person, and you're like, well, they're also executing, planning, right? Like they're under-resourced. How could they possibly do that? So where does that go? And how can you break that up? Because that person is the one that should be leading the charge.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're kind of like elevating the focus from talking to the event marketer themselves and saying that they got to fight for this to now this is a call to CEOs this is a big gap in one of your biggest spends in your entire go-to-market channel. If somebody owning the event execution is not enough.
Yeah.
It's who's owning the actual strategy.
Yeah.
And if somebody doesn't own it, somebody needs to own it. And whoever you decree that person to own it needs to have ideally resources and stuff like that. But more than anything, say so, right? Because even without a lot of resources, you can give a talented person just like constraints, and they can at least strategize in order to like make it fit. And usually it could be the event person, or if it's the CMO, or if it's the VP of sales, whatever. But somebody really needs to own the strategy.
Own it. And one thing I would say is, with so many conversations that we've had, there are so many directors of events, so many event managers, senior field marketing managers. Like, these people are talented. I have so many people that listen to this show, follow the content, and they're like, yes, I want to do it. They don't have the time. They don't have the support. They don't have the stakeholder alignment. So I would urge a CEO, a CMO, a VP, a person in your organization, ask yourself, who owns it? Do you have somebody and you're just not empowering them? And then I still would say to the event marketer, keep asking the questions up. Why are we doing this? What are the results that we want? Are we beginning with the end in mind? Hey, just because we've always gone to this event, does it really mean that we should be going to it? And how do we take this $250,000 to $5 million of capital that we're deploying towards events in a face-to-face strategy and get the most from it? So I would still urge them to be doing that, but I don't think that that's the answer.
I would also add the question of, do we have a point of view that we are really trying to express, so that when people are walking up to us, that's the answer to the question that they ask.
Yes.
And I think, if anything, I think this little update here is a nice forward to your boss, right? Like, forward the podcast episode. If you're watching the clip, forward the clip or tag your boss on it, because I think it's a conversation to be had, whether it's you, the event marketer that gets the strategy seat at the table, but somebody has to have it. And as if you're the boss of the department, if you're the owner of the company, like, that's a major spend that you have no strategy behind.
Or if you're the CMO and you own the marketing budget, like, I would be asking my CMO, like, do we want to treat our events like a sales and marketing channel or like a cost of doing business? Like, what do we want? Because if you're telling me that you want to treat it like a sales and marketing channel, and that you want results, and that we need to drive pipeline, business initiatives, brand awareness, go on and on of the things that are wanted, then I would say we need to identify who owns the strategy and how that strategy ties into whatever, pipe, go to market, right? Whatever you want to call it. Who owns it? Who's planning it? Who's responsible for it?
And I would just add to it, if you're the CMO that receives this forward, you're the CEO that receives this forward, and you're trying to figure out how to actually have that conversation, I think Matt's a really, really good resource to have that conversation with. I think, like, you're doing that a lot more these days, because you're getting outreach from the podcast. So, like, reach out to Rockway, hit Matt up on LinkedIn, and like, engage in that conversation. Maybe you can pull 4 or 5 CEOs together to have like a mastermind about it.
I would love that.
Ship it.